Morning. Morning.
Good morning. Okay, so we're going to start today back on Chaf Zayin Amud Aleph with the words Amar Rabbi Chanina. We started this on Friday, just get our bearings. Amar Rabbi Chanina, Af mi shahayumeimav al kesefo hareza korea shema'u mispalel. Even though we learned before that a person should avoid having a load on his shoulders when he's reciting Kriya Shema and Shmona Esrei, we said that, if it's something that's very valuable and it's less than a certain weight, a certain number of cobs or whatever, about 5 kilograms, it has to be less than that. So, so then it's permitted for him to recite Kriya Shema and even to do Shmona Esrei. So we're here talking about what's called mechatas. What is mechatas? It is the water that has been mixed with the ashes of the para aduma, and it requires shemira. The Torah says that the waters of the para aduma require shemira. It's derived from a pasuk that says, there shall be a guardianship for these waters of purification. Okay, so which means that a person is not allowed to have any hesech hadas, any interruption of thought on focusing on the water that he's currently transporting. The concern is that if you lose concentration, the water may come in contact with a source of impurity, ruins the water, cannot be used. And this stuff is like as good in its weight in gold. It's so valuable, and you have to really, really watch over it. So Rabbi Chanina says that as long as you have it on your shoulders, it's okay to daven Kriya Shema and Shmona Esrei. But Rav Huna Amar Kriya Shema Tefillah Ein on Srichos Kavana question mark. Is that to suggest that you don't need to have kavana when you're davening Shmona Esrei and Shema? The question that he's essentially asking is, if I have to be focused, if I have to focus my attention on the transportation of this special elixir, then what right do I have to be able to focus on my davening? You got to choose one or the other. And if you're going to be choosing on your davening, focusing on your davening, then isn't that considered removing your focus off of the water? And if so, shouldn't the water be considered tainted? Amar Rabbi Mana Kashyate Kume Rabbi Pinchas. I had the same question or a similar question in front of Rabbi Pinchas. But afilu Tamar Kriya Shema Eina Tzricha Kavana, Tefillah Eina Tzricha Kavana. That even if you were going to argue, okay, Mela, you can get by with reciting Kriya Shema without kavan as long as you just focus on one pasuk, and maybe we'll say that that's okay. But Shemona Esrei, how can we let you daven Shemona Esrei without having full focus on your words? And if so, how are you going to stay focused on the water? So Amar Rabbi Yosei Kiyamte Kaye Demar Rabbi Yaakov Bar Acha B'Shem Rabbi Yaakov Igiyucha Sof Meleches Hamayim. He says you have to say that we're dealing with a situation where the water had already been mixed in with the ashes, the water has already been fully prepared, and the enam michuvarim devar Torah, and therefore they don't have to have a clarity of thought from the Torah in the way that we normally would think. Now, what does this mean? There is this opinion that the Gemara puts forward that the only time that the Torah requires me to have full focus and concentration on the water is before it's mixed with the ash. When I pull it out of the laver, and then I'm going to take some of the ash of the paradum and mix it in. So as I'm preparing it, I'm not allowed to have any hesech hadas, any interruption of focus. But once it's been fully prepared, then it's acceptable as long as I am keeping it on my person. It's acceptable to not completely focus on it the whole time. And that's why it's considered to be okay that if you're davening Shemona Esrei with the thing on your back, even though you're not 100% focused on it, it's still going to be considered kosher. So that's the end of that Gemara. And now we're ready to start the new Mishnah. Any questions, comments before we go on? So let's get started with the new Mishnah. Now, the new Mishnah is dealing with this idea of being focused. You have to have at least kavana for the first pasuk of Kriya Shema. What if a person is in a state of where he is focused on doing another mitzvah to the extent that he mamish can't focus his attention on accepting the yoke of heaven over himself? That's the topic of our Mishnah. And we're going to be talking about a case where a person is so nervous and so tense about how to do a particular mitzvah that he can't bring himself to focus his attention on the words of Kriya Shema. As the poskim point out, Kriya Shema. As the poskim point out, this is only regarding the nervousness or the distraction from doing another mitzvah. But if it's just, my business or I'm upset and stuff like that, we require a person to regain his composure in order to fulfill the mitzvah. So we're going to go over all of this, but let's take a look at the Mishnah. The case that the Mishnah brings is Chasan Pater Mikriya Shema Laila Harishon Ad Motzoi Shabbos Imlo Asa Mitzvah. A chatan, a groom, who is going to consummate his marriage with his virgin bride. So there's an assumption that he's very nervous. But why is he nervous? Well, he's a virgin too. That could be one reason. But that's not sufficient. The issue is that she's a virgin, and there's a concern that because she has this membrane that needs to be broken, he's nervous. He's going to hurt her. He's going to hurt himself. And he doesn't know what to do. Like, he's really, really very upset. And as a result, we can exempt him from reciting Kriya Shema until after he consummates that first night. But it's not just that first night. There are going to be times when a couple is not able to consummate the first night. And I'll just make one quick comment of something that I've noticed of late. Some of the Kala and Chassan teachers are actually telling the brides and grooms today, you don't need to consummate the first night, and it may be better even not to consummate the first night.
What are you supposed to do? Count your checks?
Yeah, play checkers. Yeah, I to be honest with you, this is a bit of a foreign concept to me. This was never something that I was brought up with. But everyone is a snowflake today. Everyone's a snowflake, right? Did you hear about this case, a Porter Airlines flight from Victoria, where the flight was canceled because the parents couldn't get the little toddler child to come out from under the seat and strap in its seatbelt. So everyone's a snowflake. What did we do back when we were raising kids? We took our kid, we
whacked them in the head. Let's get in the damn seat.
All right. But no, everyone's a snowflake today. Everyone's so sensitive. Everyone has to think about everyone else's feelings. And so, and compounded with this, when we talk about consummating a marriage for the first time, we shelter our kids so much from any exposure to the opposite sex that, who's this Neanderthal that I have to go to bed with? She's upset. She's scared. He's scared. He doesn't know what a girl is, right? And so there's such a phenomenon that's going on in the very frum world. I think it's a big mistake, but, I'm not writing.
Real?
Yeah, it's real. I'm not writing the script. But to get back to our Mishnah, the Mishnah says that this is a real concern that he may not consummate the first night. And if he doesn't consummate the first night, we give him up to, and typically weddings were held for virgins on Wednesday nights. So we give him Wednesday night, Thursday night, through Friday night. We give him the first 3 days. And also until the fourth day, we also give him. So the first 4 nights, we give him through Motzoi Shabbos to be able to consummate. Beyond that, even if he hasn't been successful in consummating the marriage yet, so there is a condition. It's called vaginismus, and it goes by other names as well, where women experience extreme pain and a lot of it is emotional based, by having any pressure applied to that part of their body. And so they actually have to go to a doctor. There are other situations where a woman, her hymenal membrane is so thick that the husband simply can't succeed in rupturing it. And she has to go to a doctor in order to get it incised, in order for them to be able to resume marital life. But the bottom line is that he's a little bit nervous. So we give him up to 4 nights to be able to consummate. And because we assume he's nervous, he's patur from Kriya Shema. Now, I'll hold on, and we're going to just finish the Mishnah, Steve, and then we'll get into some questions. Maisa b'Rabban Gamliel shenasa v'kara b'layla harishon. Rabban Gamliel, when he got married, he insisted on reciting Kriya Shema the very first night of his marriage. Amrulo Talmidav limadatanu Rabbeinu shechasan pater. Rebbe, you taught us that a chasan is pater from Kriya Shema, and yet you insist on reciting it. So, aren't you contradicting your own psak halacha? Amar lahem eini shomea lachem levatel mimeni malchus shamayim afilu sha'achas. He says, I'm not going to listen to you, my students, to cite to me what I'm not supposed to do, or to exempt me from accepting the yoke of heaven upon myself, even for one moment. In other words, I'm capable of focusing my attention on accepting the yoke of heaven because I'm in love with the Ribono Shel Olam. Yes, I'm happy I got married. Yes, I know that I'm exempt. But why should I rely on an exemption? I'm capable of focusing my attention, even though I got a lot on my mind. And actually, the poskim say that today, this halacha is not halacha l'maisa. This is not practical halacha, because we assume that our chasans today are going to be, yes, they're going to be a little bit distracted, but everyone's distracted. And no one has proper kavanah today. So just like we learned before, we saw in the Shulchan Aruch had said that technically, if you didn't have kavanah for the first paragraph of Shemona Esrei, you got to go back and start again. We don't paskin that way. We also don't paskin like this Mishnah Bizman Hazen nowadays. And we say that that even if it's the first night of your marriage, you got to daven Ma'ariv anyway, and you got to recite Kriya Shema. But technically, the first night, the chassan can claim an exemption. Stephen.
Yeah, so what I learned was the nervousness was about whether the bride was indeed a virgin. So was that?
There is such an opinion that's brought down in the commentary that part of the nervousness is, what if I discover that she's not a virgin?
But this may vary in your question. Couldn't another reason for the delay be if the woman, you plan the wedding far in advance, and the wedding comes and she's a nida at that point?
Well, that's true, but why would you be nervous about that? It's either going to happen or it's not going to happen. In other words, maybe you could argue that he's nervous that she'll become a nida while he's engaged in the act, but I haven't seen that as a commentary. That's the concern, because that would be very unlikely that it should happen in that split second. There is such a discussion in the Gemara Nida that there's something called dam chimud, that certain women can menstruate instantaneously, spontaneously, as a result of sexual arousal. And therefore, the Gemara has said that because of that, there is a concern that you have to verify during the first few encounters with your wife that she's not of that nature. Okay? So maybe could that be a concern?
But
Perhaps.
he's nervous and doesn't know, like she might be something they discussed before.
Yeah. Okay. There you
Why is it a concern? Because you have all night to say Myra and Shema. So you consummate the marriage, whatever time that night, don't worry about Shema, and when you're finished, so now say Shema till the morning.
Well, the truth is that it could be that the rabbis did not want, they wanted to give the guy a break. Even if you consummated the marriage at midnight, you're probably exhausted and you may be, you may not be in the right frame of mind. And once you were off the hook, the first part of the night, we give you the rest of the night off. I don't know.
And you can have a cigarette.
Who said that?
Izzy.
Who's on this call?
It's Izzy.
Cigarette.
Izzy. Who else?
What is this, the 1950s noir drama?
What happens if it's the guy's problem?
What?
It's not the guy, and this can go on for weeks.
Right,
He
he
can't perform.
can't perform. Yeah,
It could be the other way around.
it happens. It happens. And that's why we give him off from saying Kriya Shema,
No, I'm
because
saying that maybe it shouldn't be longer, because what, like, if it ain't working, it ain't working. He's nervous and he gets more nervous and more nervous and this, and then 2 weeks later, it's like in the movies, like, were you yaitse a lot? Like the whole family's waiting for you to be yaitse, you know, like.
yeah, it usually doesn't happen like that. It's,
Well, in that show Orthodox, it did, you know,
Chat.
yeah. No, but just saying it could be longer, and if it's not her, it's him. Then he's cut her from davening for 2 weeks.
no, he only
So
gets
just
the
that
patur.
much is shot, like,
We assume that even if he hasn't succeeded in consummating after the first 4 nights, that he's already gotten used to the new situation, the new reality, and he's going to work through his issues. But davening Ma'ariv is not the thing that's preventing him.
right. And what is this Wednesday night was for a psula? That that was the minute?
Yeah, the minhag was for a
Still a lot
basula to
of
get
Ksuvas.
married Wednesday night. It's the Gemara in Ksuvas. I'm trying to remember now.
It's the second marriage you got.
Well,
married.
oh yeah, the Gemara says that she would get married Wednesday night because if the guy, for whatever reason, discovers that she wasn't a virgin, he can go to Beis Din. The Beis Din meets Mondays and Thursdays.
Only divorce her on Thursday.
So he could immediately run to Beis Din on Thursday. And we're concerned that if we make it any other day, she would find a way to appease him.
Because of Beis Din would meet on Monday too.
So you could, that's the Gemara's question, why not get married Sunday night? And apparently Sunday night was a difficult time
It was
because
already booked.
no, no, actually that's not the reason. The reason is because it may be difficult for the caterer to get the whole meal together. Since it was just Shabbos. Remember, they didn't have modern methods of refrigeration and they had to slaughter an animal. So sometimes it takes a couple of days to put together a meal like that. So, yeah. All right. Okay. Now that we've taken a look at the Mishnah.
Cigarette.
All right. Let us go on. The Gemara now says, I'm just thinking of that scene from Airplane with the autopilot. Okay. Anyway, the Gemara says, Shaninu b'Mishnah. Okay, so we learned in the Mishnah that a chassan is pater from Kriya Shema, and that but then beginning but that he has the first 4 nights off, up to the first 4 nights off, right? In other words, as soon as he succeeds in consummating the marriage, he no longer has that patur. Whether or not he has off for the rest of the night or not, it's a little bit unclear. Going back to Marvin's question, but the Gemara is going to make a diuk that Friday night also we give him the opportunity to consummate the marriage for the first time, which may present a problem from a halachic standpoint. So Rabbi Elazar ben Antignos, b'shem Rabbi Eliezer bi Rabbi Yanai, zos omeres shemuter livol be'ila batchila b'Shabbos. What we can infer from this is that you're allowed to consummate a marriage for the first time on a Friday night, because if not, then we would have said that you don't have an exemption Friday night because you have to, you're not allowed to have relations on Friday night. Now, what is the concern? The concern is that you're creating an injury and you're going to cause her to bleed on a Friday night. And the argument is that you're not allowed to cut your skin on Shabbos. That's one of the malachas of Shabbos, right? So what right do you have to consummate a virginal marriage on Friday night? And what the Gemara is basically saying is that apparently we don't look at this as the standard type of creation of an injury. So hopefully the Gemara will.
Didn't we used to have a lot of weddings also on Friday because they had Sheva Brachos from Friday night because they couldn't afford.
Yes, they used to have marriages on Friday day
Shabbos, go right into Shabbos.
to go
Sheva Brachos.
to go right into Shabbos.
So then that would be consummating Friday night.
Yeah, right. But so again, it's mutter to do that. And the Gemara apparently says that really in reality that this blood is not when the man ruptures the membrane, it's not the standard chabur, it's not the standard kind of injury, because the blood is really stored in its own pocket, and it's not the standard kind of bleeding that causes a person, that connects to a person's whole circulatory system, and is considered to be part of the nefesh. It's a separate pocket of blood, however you're going to understand that, and therefore breaking open the membrane is not a violation of a malacha of Shabbos. That seems to be the attitude of the Gemara. So the Gemara tries to deflect that, and the Gemara says not necessarily so. Amar Rebbe Chagai Kume Rebbe Yosa Tiftor Be'almana She'ena Osa Chabura. Maybe it's not a virginal marriage. Maybe the guy's getting married for the first time, but the woman that he's marrying is a widow, and so she's not a virgin. And therefore he's allowed to consummate the marriage for the first time on a Shabbos. But we could argue that maybe his nervousness is not as a result of how he's going to rupture the membrane, but maybe his nervousness is just that he's just nervous because he himself is a virgin. Okay.
And the name of Tignius, we see it in Berachos. So where does that come from?
What?
It's such a non-Jewish name.
Which
Antignius.
Antignos is a Greek name. Yeah, it's just like Alexander is a Greek name. There were certain sages that were given Greek names because they lived in a
Alexander. I mean, I know Alexander the Great came out of the name
Yeah,
Alexander,
yeah.
but Antignius is.
Antignos. I don't know who the original Antignos was from Greek society, but apparently it was adopted into Jewish society at some point. So Rabbi Yossi says that's not possible. So Amar Le v'hataninan arba'a leilos islach lamemar arba'a leilos ka'almana. He says the reason why the chassan is pater is he says, are you going to say that he's pater when he's marrying an almana? Almana doesn't get married on Wednesday nights, and almana usually gets married on Thursday nights. And so what's the explanation? He says the whole reason why we said, he says, hold on, so let me just look at the footnote here for a second. Okay, no, he doesn't, let's see. So in footnote number 6, he deals with the issue of what the potential malacha is or how it's alleviated depending upon how you look at the membrane. He says,
How real is that today? Is that a real thing?
it is a real thing, sure, of course. It depends how old the girl is, but if she's a young kala, then yeah, they're still potentially bleeding today as well. Some girls have the membrane intact and some don't. I knew a young bride who had to go to the doctor before she got married because her membrane was so thick that the doctor was concerned that her husband wouldn't be able to perform properly. So anyway, if the Mishnah was talking about an almana, it wouldn't say that we give him 4 nights, because typically an almana gets married Thursday nights, not Wednesday nights. So how can you say it's 4 nights until Motzai Shabbos? It's only 3 nights until Motzai Shabbos.
Is divorcee also?
Yeah. The assumption is an almana and a divorcee would be the same, right? And so therefore, you have to assume that our Mishnah is talking about a basula, a virgin. So anyway, he says, based on that, there really is you can't argue that when a chassan marries an almana, he's patur from Kriya Shema. If you take a look in the second paragraph of footnote 13, he says, Mekeven shanu masikim shahamishna v'habraisa oskos b'chassan hanose besula bilvad. Now that we've clarified that our Mishnah must only be talking about a chassan who's marrying a virgin, nimtza she'ein makar b'mishnah she'af hanose almana patur mikriya shema. There really is no basis to exempt a chassan who's marrying an almana from Kriya Shema, because we assume he's not that nervous. He's only nervous because he's worried about the rupturing of the membrane. Ulefi zeh anu chozrim lahavanasenu harishona shehamishna poteres chassan rak im hu nosei besula. He says, therefore we assume that he's only nervous because he's marrying a besula. V'lo b'nosei almana shehikvar beula sheinu tarid kol kach b'machshavas habeila. And it's not. He wouldn't be off the hook if he's marrying an almana. Ve'achein b'bavli muvas brayso sheshanei ba b'mufurish sharak hakonis es habesula pater mikriya shema ve'ilu hakonis es almana chaya v'atam mevor b'gemara mishum shenos almana ino nidon ketarid. And there's a brayso in the Bavli that says that explicitly, that you're not as nervous when you're marrying an almana. Okay. So let us go on. So therefore, once we've clarified that you're permitted to deflower, shall we say, a virgin on Friday night on Shabbos, the Gemara is now going to ask, why do we need to infer this from our Mishnah? Amar Rabbi Yaakov bar Zavdi, Kashyate kume Rabbi Yossi. I asked Rabbi Yossi the following question. It should be implicit, should be self-implied, self-explanatory, that you're allowed to bed a virgin on Shabbos. He says, Ma beina levein shover es hachavis v'lechol mimena grogoras. What is the difference between rupturing her membrane to someone who breaks a container in order to pull the figs out of the container? In other words, rupturing a membrane should not be a problem. It's a self-contained membrane. It's got contents inside, just like you're allowed to break a jug in order to access its contents on Shabbos. He says you should be able to do the same thing with a virgin. It should be totally fine to deflower her. And so why did you need to have this whole controversy that maybe you can, maybe you can't? Shouldn't it be obvious that it's perfectly fine? He says, the way that the footnote 17 says it, Rabbi Yaakov bar Zavdi Toein, he says his argument is Sha'af shenitein lomar shabilas besula b'Shabbos nechsheves l'malacha. Even though you might consider what he's doing a malacha because he's creating a chabura, he's causing her to bleed. Ulam ladaito ma'isa zeh shel kriyas basulim hu ma'isa shel kilkul. But it's a destructive act. Mishum shebekachu mafsidis mailas eyosa besula, because you're reducing her from a virgin to a non-virgin. Ulefizeh kishem shematzin le'inin shviras hachavis shesham yeshno ma'isa shenitin lahachshivo kemalacha, and therefore breaking a jug might be considered a malacha under normal circumstances, but since you're doing it as an act of kilkul, and you're doing something that is necessary for Shabbos, it's mutter. You're allowed to do it, and so we should make the same argument, even though it would normally be considered a malacha to cause someone to bleed, but that's only if it's for constructive purposes. But here you're actually doing something that's degenerative to her body, and therefore it should be mutter. So that's his question. So Amar Lei, the more de Basra, but take a look at the next part of the Mishnah, Uvilvad shelo yiskavein la'asos kli. So the only thing that the Mishnah says over there, the Brisa says, when it comes to breaking a jug, is that you have to have the intention that you're not making a nice opening in this break that you've made in the jug. In other words, and we're going to talk about the whole idea of opening utensils on Shabbos. Can I open a can of soda on Shabbos, since part of my objective is to make a nice little hole from which I can drink the soda? You're only allowed to break a jug to get the figs if your objective is not to make a nice hole which will create an opening so that I can still use the utensil and have a nice opening in it. Here too, with the virgin, there's a specific intention involved to create an opening in her body so that you can continue having intimacy with her. So therefore, it is a good question, and we'll continue this discussion in Yerushalmi tomorrow. Have a good day, everybody.